Namaste. My name is Henry Shadikaya, and this is part 3 of my interview with Ian Kovac. In a nutshell, the story of Ian Kovac is the story of a young boy of 10 years old living in New York City, minding his own business, and suddenly his mother becomes completely brainwashed by the cult of Chris Butler. She is told that Chris Butler is the only pure representative of the God Krishna on earth, and her salvation depends on serving him. A year or so later, she is told to go in Poland to open a center for Chris Butler, to tell the Polish people the glory of Jagat Guru Chris Butler. He wants the Polish people to know that he is the greatest spiritual master on earth. And to do this, the mother of Ian Kovac decided that she will send her son in the Chris Butler school in the Philippines. What is very shocking to me is to look at this picture. This is Ian Kovac. He is 12-year-old. He's been basically abandoned by his mother, by his father. This photo is now in the Philippines. This young man of 12 years old now has to go to 4 years of getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, getting cold bucket showers, and being sexually abused and being physically abused by the like of the sadistic adopted son of Chris Butler, Siddhaswarupananda, that used to wake up kids in the morning with a taser in their ribs. That's what this very good-looking, frail 12 years old has to go through. For what? So that he can become a pure devotee of Lord Krishna and a pure devotee of Chris Butler. He is being brainwashed into thinking that Chris Butler is the most enlightened person on this planet. Ian Kovac basically say he was robbed from many beautiful young years of his life and basically being abandoned in the Philippines. I have a lot of admiration for this young man. He's highly intelligent, and he has a story to tell that not only regard to this cult, but also regards to many other cults. There's many lessons to learn here, ladies and gentlemen. I have been inspired to do those videos by the television program of Leah Remini. And while reading the biography of Leah Remini, I came about this picture. Here's Leah Remini, 8-year-old. Same position than Ian Kovac. Her mother just divorced, and her mother joined the Church of Scientology. They used the mother 24/7 to do all kinds of things, and they put Leah with the young kids, and she said it was a motel, a cheap one, full of roaches. Fortunately, she had some access to her mother in Los Angeles, but Ian Kovac was completely separated from mother and father, 6,000 miles away from any of his parents, just abandoned there. Her mother thinking, oh, my guru, my Chris Butler, he will take care of my son for me. He did not. I believe that Ian telling his story here is a therapy for him, and it is a warning to all those people that might be near this cult of Chris Butler and other cults to take a minute here and think, do I really want to go forward and worship Chris Butler? And after all that suffering, and after all those abuses by the cult of Chris Butler, when Ian Kovac decided to do a blog so that people would know about his suffering and maybe could share information with other students that have been abused, he was contacted by the right-hand man of Chris Butler. His name is Alan Tibby, who calls himself a Chariodas that you see here. And this guy had the gall to say, what's your intention here? Why do you want to open a blog? Here's the right-hand man of the cult leader trying to save face, trying to save the brand name of the cult, Science of Identity, trying to save the brand name, Jagat Guru Siddhaswarupananda, Chris Butler, enlightened master of the Hare Krishna philosophy. This is another very dangerous guy around the cult. And remember his name, Alan Tibby. I think myself that there's enough use and abuse in this cult that if many students would want to come together and take legal action against the Science of Identity, there would be a good case to present to a judge. But that's up to them. You must not be afraid. You must stand up and be counted. That's what the Butler cult has done to many of its members. They put fear in their subconscious mind. If you talk against the guru, you will go to hell. I invite you to also look at the testimonial of Lalita Mons that explained very well the fear of all those punishments, and the testimonial of RAMA RANSON that was born and raised in the cults. I will put the link to those videos under this video. Thank you very much. Listen carefully. What did you learn through all those years in associating with the Butler cult? Go ahead.
Sure. You know, I guess I feel like I felt I was robbed of my childhood, and ultimately that's the feeling that I have, is that, you know, a time that was meant to be spent in trying to discover the world, learn my own concepts, form my own opinions, develop my own ideas on things, was completely stunted and stopped. And that's my biggest fear for the next generation of kids that are growing up in this cult.
Were you, excuse me, do you feel that are you angry that you were abandoned by your mom and dad in such a situation for 4 years, 4 important years of your life in the Philippines?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not, I'm not holding any grudges or anything, but I spent many years being angry, and then once I had kids myself, it was very mind-blowing and eye-opening to me to realize that, wow, I could never imagine. My son is 13-year-old right now, and my daughter is 10. Yeah. And I cannot even conceive of being in a state of mind where so much of my logical, rational thinking capacity has been so disabled in a matter of, for my mom it was in a matter of 1 year. To send them to the other side of the world to be with people that I had never met, and to have my kids stay in a school with a bunch of other people that I had never met, you know, to do the things that I was doing. You know, it's one thing to, you know, have a few weeks of self-discipline and wake up early and, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, this was basically, you know, sustained sleep deprivation, you know, for 4 years. And then obviously even when I came back, you know, I was continuing the schedule because I thought it was pleasing to my guru to, you know, wake up, you know, at 4 in the morning and take a cold shower, meditate, and all this kind of stuff. And I guess the thing that is most profound is that, you know, I never had any visions. I never had any kind of profound spiritual awakening. And I think one of the important messages of that is that when you're young and you're not on your own spiritual journey and making your own decisions, and somebody is spoon-feeding you concepts and ideas about all this stuff, I think it really disables your ability to have your own profound personal spiritual experience, because it's been pre-programmed and preordained and already made, a template is made of how you should believe. You're not the body, this is your guru, this is what you do, this is how you behave, this is what the stories we believe in.
You truly believe that you were brainwashed?
But yes, I was brainwashed, and my mother was brainwashed, and we were definitely made to be in a state where we were convinced of something, and everything else we were, in essence, afraid of, and had an irrational understanding of the world around us, in contrast to what it really is and how it can be processed in a completely rational and sustainable way. And this was, you know, it was gone. I didn't need to be taken away from my father, and I certainly didn't need to avoid and abandon all my friendships and various things like that. And look, and, you know, honestly, even in the end, because I slightly deviated and chose to, you know, have a different lifestyle, I still don't have any of those friends that I had from the Philippines. So in the end, you know, you kind of just really are, this cult leaves you in a place of vulnerability. You either take full shelter of the cult, and that's your life and world in this kind of disabled mental state, or you leave it and risk, you know, in this case, I lost my mother, and any relationship with her and her grandkids, and obviously any of my friends that I grew up with that I thought for sure we were all going to maintain a friendship for our entire life. And just based on the simple fact that I just don't agree with Chris Butler's methods, his way of speaking, his ideology, his particular flavor and style of practicing this whole thing, that all of a sudden, all of these people are afraid of me. I'm not afraid of them. I want to talk to them. I want to ask them, how did you feel in this school? Did you feel that you felt, you know, alone, or that it was confusing, and that it was a little bit isolating and unnecessarily austere, and that we should have had access to parents and counselors? I want to ask them these questions, and I tried. A few years back, I started a blog called the Baguio Brahmacharis, and nobody came forth except a few small group of people. Some of them were kind enough to send me some photos from the school, but they were really afraid to talk, and they didn't want to leave any comments on the blog or really stay in touch. And so this is what it leaves you with, you know, and it leaves somebody in a place where you either have to reject the very real world around you and take shelter of this fantasy world, and then the other way around, if you leave this cult, then you risk, if you were born into it, you know, you risk losing your family and your friends from a completely intolerant, fanatical, you know, mob that in some cases will, you know, when I started that blog some, you know, 8 or 9 years back, I remember Acharyadas, a top devotee of Butler's, called me almost the day that I started this blog and asked me what my intention was in starting the blog. You know, so this kind of, you know, they have a lot of websites where, you know, I mean, there must be at least 20 plus websites dedicated to just science of identity that really have no kind of new information or anything going on. They're just sort of plant sites that are put there so that there's less of an opportunity for people to, find the bad stuff that's going on with the group. And
we must mention here that there's people like Mike GABBARD that have been brainwashed and are in the cult for more than 40 years, and there's I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of people that still believe that Butler is the pure devotee, the only representative of the blue god Krishna on earth. There's still people that are very brainwashed and will probably never be deprogrammed. What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. There's no doubt that, I would say, most people who are actively initiated members within this group, and obviously, Butler had a habit of not initiating many people, but just kind of keeping them hanging on for years and running his businesses and various other things. A lot of those kind of old school devotees that have been around for a long time and have raised families within the group, absolutely, they're never going to leave. And it's neither here nor there. I mean, majority of them aren't necessarily doing any damage to the world around them or other people by any means. But it's really just a disabling of their mental faculties, and the fact that they're living out their life completely disabling one of the things that makes it so fascinating and wonderful to be a human being. To use your mind, to use your rationalization and logic to figure things out and study the world, try to understand it from your own perspective and your unique understanding. And there's just this downloaded template. It's artificial imposition on the mind, just like Bhaktivedanta Swami used to say the opposite, that material life is artificial imposition on the mind, but actually it's the other way around. This whole philosophy and a lot of the mythology and the rhetoric of guruship and cult worship, Butler worship, these are the actual artificial impositions on the mind. These are the things that disable and fill in the blanks in these devotees' minds as an answer to anything and everything, no matter and against all odds or logic and rationale. That's their answer. Go on welfare because Prabhupada said. Send your kids to the Philippines because Prabhupada said. Go start a temple and give your house to somebody, or give your money, or start this business, or abandon your family members because this personality said. And I'm sorry, but when you're in that deep in something, there's just no going back. That's it. You're and if you do make it out, that's great, but it takes I'm still struggling with it, and I still catch myself going back to my old way of thinking about something is my karma, or I must have been displeasing in some way to Guru or Krishna or something like that. This is just complete mental enslavement.
How old are you now?
40. Still
at 40-year-old, you still catch yourself being part brainwash.
Oh, of course. I mean, I never had any kind of, I sought therapy and various other things over the years. But, for me, a lot of my deprogramming has been to actually study very rigorously the very philosophies that I, was just told blindly to follow. And now by studying them, I can deconstruct it and have a better understanding of my own and my own appreciation for it from my standpoint and my feeling of understanding and actual experience and realization, rather than something that's just implanted in my brain from childhood. So yes, I do still struggle to this day, but I try to take a different approach in studying all this stuff and have it be something that, I let the environment be my my guide and my spiritual guide and stuff like that. Not in a woo-woo way, just I respect that the world has a lot to teach me, and all of these cultures and traditions have a lot to teach us. Certainly, absolutely, there's no question about it. But not the way Butler does it,
Yeah.
and not the way that Science of Identity, tries to introduce it to people. It's unnecessary, is what it is.
Yeah,
If somebody is firmly attracted to studying, Indian philosophy or culture, they can study it. There's plenty of information out there, and it's not just one book, Bhagavad Gita as it is, or some Bhagavatam that was written by one person and an organization's opinion.
In my opinion, the Butler cult is basically similar to the other cult, meaning that he says, I am divine and you're not. You surrender to me, you serve me, you give me your money, you give me your attention, you focus your mind and your heart on me, and that's what the brainwashing is all about, is it not?
Just like when you go to any of these temples or anything, it's not uncommon for Butler devotees to really dote on their guru and, make it very much about Butler. And so just like when my mother and I joined, like I said, it was just a matter of 1 month before our house was just covered with pictures of this guy, a guy we had never met, just heard some, polished up lectures of his from his, very staged Chris Butler Speaks lectures. It's really incredible, because a lot of his devotees are actually doing the legwork for him in the end. And, they basically, are told by Butler that you need a living, breathing spiritual master. All these other people are bogus. I'm a universal teacher, Jagat Guru, and, I'm in this long line of spiritual teachers teaching the authentic path. Guru is not appointed. ISKCON appoints their gurus, so they're not real, blah, 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 this and that. And, it is basically a Jesus figure he's made of himself, where, yes, you are basically told by him and his devotees that you can't really get to any semblance of a spiritual life without him at the center of your worship and your thought process, and obviously your activities in the form of making money for him or joining one of his businesses or doing something in relation to his particular missions and temples and stuff like that.
Yeah, but in his lecture, he has made it clear that serving the guru is the most important thing that a person can do.
So it's basically anything shy of saying, it's one shade shy of saying that he's basically God. And I think that's the whole fallacy that I find with a lot of the whole guru culture, is that, it's this notion that, one can get all of their stuff from one place.
If I would ask you the question, after all your experience around Chris Butler, what would you say to people who want to join the Butler cult, or what would you say why people should not join or worship Chris Butler? If I would ask you a question like that.
As of the most recent last couple of months, the Science of Identity Foundation has really kept under wraps, any incongruences and, the ugly part of the which, much of it was really Butler's lectures that, people like myself claimed to have heard growing up. And, recently in the last couple of months, some video footage surfaced, transcripts of lectures had surfaced, and, these are all really valuable in basically understanding why such a personality is, first of all, far from worthy of being worshipped, but hardly even worthy of being listened to on a fundamental level as a friend or well-wisher or teacher of any sort. the man goes off on rants and anger, tirades against Muslims, homosexuals, his own devotees, other spiritual organizations and religions. It's just not something that you seek in somebody who's meant to be so-called enlightened. He runs an organization that's really just a front. Beyond that are basically a string of linked together businesses that are involved in all sorts of pyramid schemes and financial fraud. A lot of the stuff's been, reported on over the years by different people. And, he has a lot of disciples around the world who are now kind of mixing odd things like yoga nidra practices with mantra meditation and kirtan and stuff like that. So he's kind of created a hodgepodge version of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Obviously, there's a lot of other Gaudiya Vaishnava groups that are more authentically carrying the torch of the tradition and revealing more authentically what they're about. It'll be a day in hell before, the Butler group admits vocally and frankly what the goal of their philosophy is, which is basically to realize your eternal spiritual form as a 12-year-old cowherd girl who helps Krishna and his girlfriend Radharani, get off in a transcendental way. God forbid you think of sex when somebody says that. And, it's just, it's basically just a big sham and clown act, replete with your garden variety, elephant-headed gods, lion-headed gods, four-armed gods, four-headed gods, spaceman gods who travel from place to place. I mean, it's just a riot clown show with every sideshow act that you can imagine. Really has no place in a young child's brain in the contemporary day and age.
But tell me, I mean, I know this is probably weird, but isn't it true that if the faggot stopped screwing the other faggot's asses, wouldn't AIDS stop?